The next bad guy on their black coral hit list, Dwight Major.
Major cocaine trafficker in the Bahamas. Major trafficker. He was very hesitant to meet anyone, and he had basically lookouts wherever he went. He had bodyguards. He had people that checked parking lots before he would come into a parking lot.
Somehow these guys seem to somehow find my radar.
DEA wants Jim to go undercover. Jim creates an alias, Jim Aubrey, and sets his sights on Dwight.
I said, listen, you can't hit a home run if you don't step up to the plate, okay? I'll give anybody a shot.
The DEA has an informant send a message to Dwight about a great trafficker he knows, named Jim Aubrey.
He had worked with Majors over the years and had given Jim the vouch.
I was going to transport $1.2 million worth of coke out of Colombia for him.
But first, Dwight wants to meet Jim and size him up. Make sure he's not police.
The local law enforcement in the Bahamas could not believe that Dwight Majors was actually going to meet this white Bahamian from the United States.
But he does. Jim dresses the part and goes to the restaurant.
I had a pair of board shorts, a pair of sandals, and no shirt. I was wired, carrying it in my pocket.
My concern, obviously, was always Jim's safety first. So we wanted to make sure he was safe. But we also didn't want to get too close because we knew that Dwight Majors was going to have lookouts all around him.
Dwight shows up with a posse, including some Bahamian police who are on his payroll.
A Bahamian policeman come up to my car and looked me over and then gave the thumbs up to Dwight and his entourage. We met, we got inside.
Jim and Dwight sit down across from one another at the table.
He folded his arms like this and he leaned way back in his chair, like, one of those looks. There were a few Johnny Walker Blacks on the table. He started asking me questions about where I went to school, where I lived on the island, all that I could answer. I'm letting him think he has control.
But Jim needs to steer the conversation to drugs.
Something told me that I had to become really aggressive with him. So I went and put my finger up in his face, and I told him that I would beat him to death if he wanted to go down that road. For somebody to do that to him, to talk to the Pablo Escobar of the Bahamas and treat him like he's a nobody and demean him in front of some of his people, he calmed down after that. And, we're on the same playing field.
Dwight runs his mouth, and to the DEA recording him, it's pure gold.
The outside surveillance team could hear the conversation that was going on.
They had already talked a lot about dope and money, to where Majors had implicated himself pretty seriously into what he was doing.
Then, something goes wrong.
We were trying to keep the Bahamians out of the parking lots close to the restaurants. They couldn't resist. They got in there, and they were seen. It took Dwight Major's counter-surveillance guys about 5 minutes to spot the cops in the parking lot.
When they yelled police, that table went straight up in the air. Those drinks went 3 feet off the table and onto the ground.
Jim, who is unarmed, sits tight.
There was no reason for him to think that I was the police.
Dwight and his bodyguards don't give Jim a second look as they run out of the restaurant.
I don't think they knew at that time that Jim was part of the team. They just knew that there were cops in the parking lot and Dwight was not going to stick around.
They jumped in their vehicles and they took off.
By the time we could circle the wagons, he was already out of the area.
But you can't get far on an island.